Good evening, everyone. Welcome once again to another episode of Anupali, your favorite radio and TV program on a Sunday evening. I am happy to be with you today to discuss another matter of relevance and importance to you as citizens. Over the past months, your government has been taking several decisions at the cabinet level to fast-track ongoing projects and programs, to begin new initiatives, and to increase efficiency at various levels of the public service. We are forging ahead with sound policies at a time of severe shock to the economy brought on by the COVID-19 pandemic, which has disrupted economic activity worldwide. Dominica, a small island developing state, has not been spared the effects brought on by the reduced activity in tourism, travel, and trade. Yet, we are keeping our head above water through capable management of public sector finances. Our debts have been serviced regularly. Salaries continue to be paid on time, and we are managing our commitments at home to keep the economy afloat. People in jobs and businesses running. On today's program, I am joined by two senior public officers for a discussion on some of the decisions we have taken in the past months and the fiscal measures that are in place to maintain the stability of government's public finances. Ms. Skerrit is the Cabinet Secretary Acting, and Ms. Dennis Edwards is the Financial Secretary Acting. They are my guests this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, friends all, welcome to yet again another episode of Anupali, and I wish to welcome our guests, Ms. Prevost, the Secretary of the Cabinet, and Ms. Dennis Edwards, the Financial Secretary. Now, Ms. Prevost, you're currently performing in the role of Secretary to the Cabinet after serving as Permanent Secretary in several ministries, and most recently as the Chief Personnel Officer as well. How are you settling into this new function as the most senior public officer, tasked with such great responsibility?
Okay, thank you, PM. Good evening, PM and FS, and good evening to all of your listeners. And it's good to be back on Anupali this evening. Of course, assuming the position of Cabinet Secretary, acting as Cabinet Secretary, is something I take immense pride in. This position as the most senior public servant is one that comes with tremendous responsibility. But my approach to this role is the same as every other job that I've held. Be passionate about what you do, be passionate about your job, put people first, and build a solid team. So I've been very fortunate. At some point in time, I felt unfortunate to have been in about 7 or so ministries and establishments, so that would be about 8. But now, I see that it was an experience that prepared me for this role. I think so far, everyone has been very supportive, yourself, the entire cabinet, and of course the committee of permanent secretaries who I work with on a daily basis, and all of the public officers who are across the public service contributing to national development. So it's something that I look forward to, and it's something that I see as a great responsibility.
Thank you very much. Now, Ms. Edwards, you're in the hottest seat in the public service, the seat of Financial Secretary. And you have taken up this post at the most challenging, or one of the most challenging periods of our history, that is the current worldwide pandemic that we are experiencing. My question to you is, how have you adjusted to this new role, especially in this period?
Thank you, PM. Good evening to you. Good evening to you, CAPSEC, as well, and to the viewers and listeners. Thank you for the invitation to your program. PM, it has indeed been a challenging period. We had very little time for warm-up. Just had to jump right into it and roll up the sleeves and start working. The biggest challenge, of course, was coming into a situation where it was mid-May and we were just reopening. Some businesses were still closed. People were losing their jobs at the time. The ports were still closed to passengers. The fiscal position had deteriorated. And there was great uncertainty as to what would happen going forward. So the challenge for me was basically implementing some of the measures that you had referred to in your response to the COVID-19 pandemic, both the economic and social aspect of it, and at the same time finding the resources as well to fund these programs and putting the systems in place to be able to implement them. It was a quick adjustment, but being that I had been within the Ministry of Finance before and was familiar with its operation, I had to work quickly, very much supported by the FS, the former FS, Mrs. Rosamond Edwards. So she basically worked with us, basically first 2 weeks being there full-time on call, and from there she's taken on her assignment, but we've continued the journey. It has been a challenging time. I've adjusted quickly, but it's still on, it's still ongoing.
It's ongoing for sure, and we want to thank you for that. Now, Ms. Privo, any priority areas of focus that you would like to share with our audiences as you continue in this new office?
Yes, well, PM, the Cabinet Secretary is also, in addition to serving the role as the Secretary to the Cabinet, is also the head of the Public Service. And over the last few years, we have been identifying a number of areas for improvement in the public service that I see as priority. Public sector transformation. A few years ago, we had a medium-term public sector reform strategy that has since expired, and what we have been doing now is working on a new public sector transformation strategy, looking at how we take the public service into, a modernized environment. There are a number of priorities throughout the public service, like service delivery improvement, the digital economy. We have also the organizational review and reclassification project that PM has been speaking quite a lot about. Within the Cabinet Secretariat, of course, PM, we have the electoral reform consultancy that is ongoing, and that is something that the Cabinet Secretariat has to keep close eye on and coordinate. And also, we would like to ensure that we can improve our communication with the public. As the public would have seen, Cabinet has already started doing the post-Cabinet briefings, and we'd like to just ensure that the public is up to speed with the key policy decisions that are being made on a regular basis. Budget and policy implementation is something that I know is very critical for you. And in this role, I see also an opportunity to work with the ministries alongside the FSPS planning and ensure that the policies that are approved in the budget, the projects and programs that throughout the public service, that we can have more efficient implementation of these projects. So these are some of the areas I see as priority moving forward.
And you're also the focal point for CREED.
For CREED, yes. So also the focal point for CREED. Of course, we know CREED is a very critical organization for us post-Hurricane Maria. We have the Climate Resilience and Recovery Plan, and the CREED is in the process of implementing that plan. There are a number of projects, infrastructure projects that CREED is responsible for implementing. And, the idea is to continue to work with CREED in that regard.
Thank you. Now, Ms. Edwards, your portfolio within the government system is especially important in the management of the country's financial matters. What have been your immediate areas of focus since you assumed that responsibility?
Thank you, PM. The main area, I will start with the main area, finding resources on a day-to-day basis, just to be able to keep the government machinery and the others going. And so government has some policies, some commitments, programs to fund well within the budget, but quite apart from that, we had the extraordinary measures related to COVID, both in terms of health, in terms of the social side and the economy. So a number of them we had to find the resources to fund. I'll take for example the livelihood support, that's the unemployment grant at the Dominica Social Security. We've had that. We've had the loans at the aid bank as well. In the case of Social Security, a number of people have benefited from it, and they continue to benefit. It was initially for a 3-month period. We've extended. Right now it's going on to the 30th of April, so that people who are currently not engaged, have been affected by the pandemic, can continue to have some support. In the case of the aid bank, we had initially allocated $5 million for this. we've exhausted the funds, and so we're in the process of getting on. Aid Bank has advised that they need another $5 million. We're in the process of securing that $5 million so that we can continue. We know there are pending applications that we need to respond to. Then we have the other relief, like the tax measures that we put in place as a result of it. So we had all of this that we needed basically to put systems in place and to fund. Quite apart from the budget, the normal recurrent and capital budget. Since then, I've also been very much involved in budget implementation. We put the budget together, this budget implementation, a number of the measures that you announced in the budget address had to be implemented. The amnesty is on, expires at the end of, it was extended, now expires at the end of January, just to remind the taxpayers. At the same time, we had the other tax measures, like those related to the tourism sector. We also had the ones to do with the land transfer fees. So all of these we had to put in place, not only in terms of legislation, but in terms of systems. So we've had that. Apart from this, we have to monitor what's happening out there within the public service with the budget, the expenditure side, the revenue side, the macro fiscal performance, and all of this together. While all of this is happening, we still cannot lose sight of building financial resilience. And so we've been working on that aspect as well concurrently. And so these are basically what I would say the main areas of focus for us in the Ministry of Finance.
No, I know there are many people who are interested in the monies at the Aid Bank, and you referenced this. Now, the government placed the commitment was for $5 million.
$5 million.
And the government has in fact given to the Aid Bank that $5 million.
$5 million.
And my understanding is that that $5 million would have been exhausted, meaning all would have been given out already.
Aid Bank has assured us that they have claims well in excess of
but they have claims well in excess of the $5 million.
Well in excess of $5 million.
So there's a consideration by the government to put an additional sum to be able to facilitate and to assist the other persons who would have applied and who have not received.
And actually have approvals, but have not received the funds.
Have received the funds.
Right.
Okay, and the view is that the government is waiting for some funds. It's in negotiation for some funds, and once those funds are received, then we will pass the fund.
We're very hopeful that we will get by February.
February. Right. And then in respect to the measures you mentioned for tourism, for manufacturing, all of those things are in effect.
We've put in the systems in place, the legislations have been passed, so right now they're all in effect.
Okay, excellent. Now, I have spoken many times in the public domain about the devastating impact of the pandemic on government's revenue. From where you sit, FS, what has been the extent of this impact on revenue?
It has had a major impact, particularly during the period April to June 2020 was the worst period for us. And during that period, we saw tax revenue plummet, and then it declined by 39.8%, which is a huge amount in terms of revenue for us. We had to find some revenue from somewhere. But importantly for us, which is always a trigger, which is always the one who gives us an idea, the one that gives us an idea of what's happening in the economy, is the VAT. And the VAT during the period April 2020 to June 2020 declined by 39.6% when we compare it to our performance in 2019. Since July, we've seen a gradual improvement. So for the period July 2020 to December 2020, tax revenues are now down by 23.8% if we compare it to the period in 2019, same period. And importantly, and what's more encouraging, the VAT is even lower. The VAT is down by 18.8%. So it gives us quite a bit of encouragement that we are moving in the right direction. The VAT would have moved from 39.6% back for the period April to June down to 18.8%. That's where we are. And every month we see an improvement. So we're very, very hopeful that hopefully we've passed the worst.
Yeah. So we're now in respect to VAT at 18.8%.
Below all levels.
Below all levels
2019
of 2019. And as the months go by, we're seeing a gradual improvement. Okay. Well, let us hope that it continues to improve. Now, in the past years, we have had several shocks to our economy. brought on by the current COVID-19 pandemic, and also successive natural disasters. How are we readjusting our approaches to government spending to respond to these shocks? And what are some of the what we call the belt tightening measures the government would have taken to mitigate against this impact?
And first of all, I want to reference us back to Maria. And the reason I'm doing that is because I say to our partners all the time, if we hadn't been hit by Maria, we would have been in a better position to weather COVID-19. But we were just recovering from Maria when COVID-19 came. So it put us in a very, very tight fiscal position. But what we've done, we've developed as a government, led by you, developed our own homegrown fiscal adjustment program. And we've been familiar with fiscal adjustment program going back to 2002 to 2004, you will recall. We know when we need to tighten up. And so as a result, right within, even before the budget, before taking the budget to Parliament, we actually went through the different line items within the expenditure side, the recurrent expenditure side, and did some cuts. So that was the main part of it for us. And we're saying that we are sure we could come in lower, basically by trying to reduce wastage. We recognize that we have to continue to spend on healthcare, on education, housing, social programs. We have to continue to stimulate agriculture, construction, the digital economy, all of these very critical sectors. But where we can cut back is on the recurrent expenditure side. So we have done that. In terms of wastage, we are looking at the fleet of vehicles that we have and reducing the fleet of vehicles, also the use of government vehicles. And the use, I will say, the use and quote-unquote abuse of government vehicles, we're looking at this as well. We're looking at the utility bills, because quite often we find that government may not be utilizing a particular area, the bill is still being paid to government, and so Ministry of Public Works has been charged to review that aspect of it, the different utility bills, as they're responsible for the payment of all of these bills. Then we're looking at rental of properties, because government is renting quite a few properties across the country. What we're trying to do is consolidate, and CAPSEC is one of those leading the charge on this, consolidate where we have different ministries in one geographic area, how much can they share a building as opposed to each ministry having to rent a building, and basically seeing how we could reduce some costs. Also, in terms of the social programs, we recognize that we have to continue to provide the social support, but we have to also look at the administration of the support. And in some cases, the way the support is administered, you find that we could tighten up a bit there as well. So we look in general, a lot of these measures are measures that will over time benefit the system. They'll bring short-term gains as well as long-term gains. So these are just some of the measures that we're looking at. But overall, we're looking to cut down on wastage.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Because you have the existing challenges prior to COVID-19, and added to that, you have the challenges of COVID-19.
That's right.
To confront.
Okay.
Ms. Prevost, we have prioritized the matter of job reclassification for the public service. This is a matter that is of great interest to every public officer, and I am one of the persons who's a strong advocate of it. I believe that this would allow for to addressing some of the concerns which public officers have been raising with regards to promotions, regards to remuneration, etc., etc. No, I do not know what the report will say, but we hope is that it will give us some recommendations on how we can go about responding to this. Now, can you tell the public what is the status of this? Because we've been talking about it. What has happened since then, and what are the next steps?
Okay, so PM, the last time I was here, I think we informed the public that we had just approved a contract. Cabinet had just approved the contract for CARICAD. Lots of people keep saying, what is CARICAD? CARICAD is really the Caribbean Center for Development Administration. It is one of the organs of CARICOM that assists the public sector development, public sector transformation, human resource development throughout the Caribbean. And the CARICAD has worked with Dominica in the past and has worked with a number of governments in the region to support our human resource goals. Now, since then, we've signed a contract in November of 2020, and the exercise has started. A lot of people are asking, why are we doing this again? It's something that, has been raised with us a number of times. But in 2013, government conducted a job evaluation exercise. What we are doing now is an organizational review and reclassification that includes a number of other components that were not in the last evaluation. Since then, PM, we've had Erica, we've had Maria, we've had a pandemic, and all of these events, all of these shocks have taught us that the public service needs to be transformed in a way that we are more agile, more resilient, more responsive to the issues and the challenges that come up. So it's not just looking at the jobs and grading the jobs and, ensuring that we have them in the right classifications, but also looking at the jobs that exist now. How relevant are they? How can we improve on these jobs? How can we review the job descriptions to ensure that service delivery is improved across the public service? So this particular exercise is going to we are conducting a comprehensive review of all ministries, all jobs, all departments. We're looking at the mandates. We're looking at our climate resilience and recovery plan. We're looking at the national resilience and development strategy. We're looking at the level of service delivery in the public service, and reviewing those jobs to determine how do we best respond to those priorities. So far, CARICAD has been doing the necessary documentation and research. They have actually started with the rationalization of allowances component of the assignment. This is something which is new. Now, this is something that the unions have been asking for a long time. We have a number of allowances throughout the public service. The police officers have several allowances. We have medical staff with different allowances. And what we are trying to do is to understand all of the allowances that exist, how they relate to salaries, to the compensation package, and look at where they can be reviewed. Can they be combined? Can we have, so this is what we are doing right now. We have worked with the consultant to collect all of the data on the allowances throughout the public service. Some of the things we are looking at is who has authorized. Is it legislation? Is it a cabinet decision? Is it, just a procedure throughout the ministry? So we are looking at all of the aspects related to allowances right now. That is ongoing. 2 weeks ago, CARICAD met with the Committee of Permanent Secretaries. And this, we think, is very important because at the level of the leadership of the public service, we need to ensure that there is buy-in into the process. The PSCs are the ones who are going to be responsible for collecting the data, providing to the consultants, providing feedback throughout the process. So we have agreed that moving forward, we will have a team of public officers and permanent secretaries who would continue to provide direction throughout this process. I just wanted to sort of go through the phases of the approach, the consultancy. The first phase, as I said, we will be looking at the research and documentation, interviews with leadership, focus groups. The unions are going to be very important. The public. We are also going to be conducting a survey among public officers. It's important in this process that public officers be involved and that it's not just something that is happening at the leadership level. So CARICAD will conduct a survey among 30% of public officers. And phase 3 and 4 will involve the actual job analysis. Now, what we are doing in this process is selecting a group of public officers who will be involved in the review. CARICAD will undertake training for these public officers. So after the fact, it is something that we can institutionalize and continue. Job analysis, job description writing, job review, and this is also going to be very important in the process. Then the final stage will be to conduct the evaluation and the grading of the jobs, and of course complete the rationalization of allowances, which will fit with those. So it's a process. Like I said, we've assembled a team. We meet with CARICAD almost weekly on this project, and it's something that we expect. Like you said, we know it's a priority for government, and it's something that we look forward to rolling out over the next few months.
Now, when do we expect this study to be completed though, this exercise?
So it's 12 months, so
12
we're
months.
looking at by November, by the end of this year.
So by the end of this year, we expect to have a report.
Yes, definitely.
And of course, we'll be advised on
On the
what the next
recommendations,
steps.
what the next steps are.
Okay. Now, FS, in the past months or so, we have taken a number of decisions at the cabinet level, most of which came from the Ministry of Finance. For example, in December, we approved the development of a fiscal rules and responsibility framework, which will establish parameters to allow us to build fiscal resilience. Now, can you tell our audience what does all this really mean for the management of our fiscal affairs?
PM, based on what you said to the world immediately after Hurricane Maria, we want to make Dominica the first climate resilient country in the world. And to get this done, we have drafted the National Resilience Development Strategy, the Climate Resilience Recovery Plan, and last year, the Disaster Resilience Strategy. All three documents refer, one of the main components of all three documents, one of the main pillars of all three documents is building financial resilience. If we are to become a resilient country, we also have to have a resilient fiscal setting of the resilient fiscal system. And so we continue to be vulnerable to natural disasters. We continue to be vulnerable to external shocks. What this is doing, the framework, the fiscal rules and responsibility framework, is setting parameters within which government will operate in terms of debt, like the debt to GDP ratio, the fiscal balances, like the primary balance, the public expenditure, the wage bill ceilings, all of this. In October, we started contributing to the Vulnerability Fund, the Vulnerable Risk and Resilience Fund. We started at the ECCB.
And that's a fund that is established at the central bank.
Established at the central bank. We've been contributing $500,000 every month. But what it is still an informal arrangement. So this we would put within the fiscal framework as well, fiscal responsibility framework. And within that framework, we would discuss how we would invest the funds. So for example, we pray to God that we will have another 10 years with no shock, or with no shock where we need to access the funds.
I would prefer also 30 years.
Okay, so let's ask for 30. So over a period of 30 years, we would have contributed to that fund, right? We need to know how to invest it. We wouldn't want it to simply be sitting at the central bank. So within that, we will put this sort of guidelines. Also, basically, when can we draw down? It shouldn't be a fund where we agree to put in the money now and in June we decide, okay, let's just use some of the funds. We should have basically rules and regulations as to when we can draw down, so that we always have these funds there for a rainy day. The idea basically is just as we should do as individuals and as homes and as families, where we save during periods of good time, we save, we try to bring down our debt, so that when the events take place, we have some room, we have some space, we have some reserves. And that is the whole idea. So we will have some parameters, basically set some parameters. I should say though, PM, we already have them, we just haven't formalized them. But we set some parameters, basically formalize them, say to the public, these are the parameters we're going to be operating in. The public will get a chance to judge us as well, to see that we're maintaining these parameters. I should also say that even if we set the parameters, basically good practice will say to you, but when you go into period of crisis, you're allowed to basically go away from those because you have to respond to a crisis. But the long and short of it is just having your reserves, having the fiscal space, all part of the resilience strategy, so that by the time we get to be that resilient Dominica, our financial situation also resilient.
No, as I understand
it
is the intention of the government to transform this framework into legislation.
That's right.
And so that it also imposes on the executive branch of government the legislation that
That's right.
would ensure that that which you've been doing informally, you
This is
now
not
have legislation imposing it on you as well.
That's right. And Cabinet has decided to take the legislation to Parliament by the 30th of April 2021.
30th of April.
Yeah.
And of course, it is the Minister of Finance intention to impose the same rules on all government-owned companies and all statutory entities, that every one of you must have a resilience fund that will be under the management authority of the Financial Secretary, so that we have not only fiscal discipline within the central government, but throughout the public sector. And it's something that I'll be engaging the various statutory boards and companies. And so you're aware of it now, so prepare yourselves for this. Now, we also approved, FS, the debt portfolio review, which was brought to Parliament and laid on the table in December of 2020. What are the expected benefits of this measure, though?
This 1 PM is all about accountability and transparency. Government wanting to be even more transparent and even more accountable. In order to take a loan, the Minister for Finance has to get Cabinet Parliament's approval by resolution. So that already alerts the public that the Minister for Finance is taking a loan. Quite apart from that, within the estimates, the annual estimates, you would also publish that data. In the budget address, we would also say basically the total debt, the total public debt is at this, debt guaranteed, so we would give this. But this debt portfolio review actually goes into deeper analysis, more in-depth analysis of the debt and the stock of debt, the composition of this, the debt, the risk levels, and all of this. So it gives the public a chance to review. You know, here's my book. You could, in terms of debt, you could go ahead, you could review it, you could see all who we've owed, because probably all who we owe, maybe at the time you didn't hear it in Parliament, but you can see the balances and all of this and how we've been paying. And we publish it on the government website as well, so it's available to anybody across the world.
So it's been laid on the table in Parliament, and it's available to the entire public, enhancing transparency and accountability in government. Mm-hmm. Now, we also approved of the publishing of the draft Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Property Bill. Can you let us know what this is about as well? It's a
long title.
Yeah.
And we published the first week of January. Yeah. And it's out there, it's on the government website as well, www.dominica.gov.dm, on the bills for review. And the public can take a look at it, stakeholders. We've written to the stakeholders, asking them to take a look at it as well. The intention is that this particular bill will replace the 2012 Procurement Act. What has happened is, PM, we enacted the 2012 bill Act, but we identified several weaknesses, even with the support of our partners, identified several weaknesses within. A review was done of that act, and based on the number of amendments which would have had to make to the 2012, a decision was then taken, a recommendation was made, and government accepted to review the bill and just redraft. So we've redrafted. It has taken it to a more modern bill, covering a number of different areas. We've put it out there in the public. Basically, we're hoping that people will review. The stakeholders will review. It was drafted with the support of the CDB and also reviewed by the World Bank. We're basically waiting on the public to come back with comments so that we could then review and submit to Cabinet for consideration to take to Parliament.
Yeah. Have we also sent it to the EU?
We've sent it to the EU. We've sent it to the EU.
So
we sent it to the EU, the World Bank. We sent it to them.
And the EU, we know for sure that the the Caribbean Development Bank and the World Bank have given us feedback.
They've given us feedback
on this.
Yeah. We got the feedback before publishing.
And the view from them is that those provisions would meet international best practices.
That's the view from them.
And to modernize the procurement process and so on.
That's the view from them. We had a first draft. That's the draft we were hoping to publish last August.
Yeah.
The World Bank and CDB reviewed again, and we received significant comments from both agencies. basically with both of them with the same aim of trying to modernize the bill going into 2020, 2021. We should be going with a modern public procurement bill.
And the intention of the government is to have this bill enacted into law by April as well.
That is the intention as well.
Okay. All right. Now, Ms. Prevost, we have embarked on several new initiatives to improve the provision of service within the public sector. This is a criticism people always extend to us, that we're not efficient, we don't respond, we're indifferent to the public, etc. The list goes on. What is the status update on these, and what can we expect to see happen next?
Okay, this is an area that I'm very passionate about, and something that's in the Ministry of Governance, actually, that we've been leading under the leadership of Honorable Greta Roberts, who is also very passionate about this issue. And I remember the last time that we were here, a few callers called and mentioned, you know, the state of the delivery of services in the public service as a concern. Now, what we've done in the last few months, we've undertaken some in-depth consultations with ministries. We've been doing what we call a service delivery assessment, and we've met with over 30 departments that provide services to the general public, and we've also conducted a public survey to identify the priority areas for improvement in the public service. It is very interesting what the public is telling us, and we've found that the feedback has been very detailed. People have actually told us some of the things that they are looking forward to seeing in the public service. Some of those include access to information. This is a challenge. Individuals want to know how to apply for a certain license or a certain service. Where do we get the forms? How much does it cost? We want to ensure that we can provide sufficient access to information about the services that government provides. Someone should not have to leave their homes to come to Roseau just to find out how to get a marriage license. I should be able to sit at home and get the information over the internet and have, you know, a form downloaded that I can fill out and then come to the ministry. There are other things that we're looking at. Digital access to services. This is something that came up in the survey as well. We have individuals overseas, Dominicans in the diaspora, the business community, who would be better served by digital access to services. Now, there are two components of this. One is fees, payment of fees, and the other would be application forms, digitization of forms. And this is something that was highlighted as a priority in the survey. I'm very pleased to say that we've been working with the Ministry of Finance, and the ICT department has developed an e-payment portal. I'm very proud of our staff. It's fully built by public officers from the ICT department, led by Jermaine Japper and her team. And the e-payment portal is now live. You can pay for a number of government services. It's something that we will increase the number of services available over a period of time. We tested it for a while with the COVID-19 fees. So if you are overseas and you have to pay COVID-19 fees or quarantine fees, you can right now do so